Welcome back to Shredder's Not Dead. If they make you bang your head, we'll talk with them or about them. And I'm joined today by Johannes of the amazing Avatar, fresh off the back of the announcement that you will be out here touring Australia very soon.
Yes, indeed, for the first time, and it's about time.
I think we've been deprived of a tour from you guys for a long time, and you're an amazing band. You've achieved a lot, and now you've
Well, thank you.
ticked off the most impressive thing in your career, which is obviously coming over here.
There's something to be said about, getting break open that door for the first time into any place of the world that you usually don't play. We spent most of our careers in that part of the world that thinks it's the whole world, meaning where we're from. So no, that I mean, to get to go somewhere for the first time, it is a big deal. It feels like a achievement in itself. So all jokes aside, we're excited.
Yeah, and Dance Devil Dance had a pretty huge reception over here, particularly in the charting numbers, if they mean anything in this day and age. I suppose it counts for something.
Mhm.
I imagine you're pretty keen to keep that energy going in terms of the reception for the record over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we it's ultimately a continuation of what's been going on this whole year. We have put together the here comes the sales pitch, but it just happens to align very well with how I feel that we right now we're putting on the best shows we ever have, and and it's just to find more places to get to do that across the world is the whole idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And the record's been out a little while now. And like you said, you guys feel like you're doing your best live shows you have in a while. So, how do you feel that the songs of Dance Devil Dance have started to go now that they've had that room to grow? And, a bit of time after release and a bit of performing it live obviously gives the songs, shall we say, a different angle to when they're first released. So, is the feelings towards it change much within the band?
Uh, no, I mean, there's certainly the thing of actually here's the thing. Historically, the way it's happened for a couple of albums, really a whole lot of them up until we were forced to stay home for Hunter Gatherer, we ended up being on the road already at the time of the release of a new album. So because the just how touring and release schedule lined up this time where we had time to put out a few of the songs and have the actual album drop at least a little bit before we hit the road, it already felt like they were golden oldies by comparison. Well, just for Avatar Country and what came before, Hunt the Gather and Hail the Apocalypse, I think all three of them was kind of, and here's a song that you guys are gonna love in 2 weeks. Trust us. Uh, so the integration for that reason was pretty easy, uh, and I think also due to the nature of how it was recorded live, the album in the sense, not me, I won't do that, but vocals don't quite work like that on albums, but um, like we recorded everything with the musicians sitting in a room together. Uh, Actually, to for drum and bass was all done. We kept those takes, but we're all and so we record song by song instead of instrument by instrument. Then the guitar players would be there, play the whole song. So I would lace a scratch track for a couple of takes, but then focus on the instrumental part. Guitar players were just there for the whole thing, so that every time Henrik and John, laid down tracks for it, they were actually playing the songs and not just parts. Then to be able to do more with the guitar sound uh, individually, track by track, and try things out, guitars get redubbed, and then it's me. But that means that there's ultimately from the very beginning, starting of course in rehearsal, but way into the studio process where it's a band playing together in one shape or another. So you really have a very close relationship to what it feels like to lock in with each other and not just listen to the click track or whatever and while doing the songs. So in terms of that syncing new music to that inner clockwork of you before you bring it on stage, we had done quite a bit of that by
Mm.
comparison to earlier album cycles. So it was a nice, sweet, easy transition. And I mean, now the album's been out for a while and still is doing well and still helping us grow and doing all those things. But I kept going around saying, and I still feel like this is, and sorry, every singer says that for every album. We're supposed to, that's a job, but it's the best album we ever made. Uh, I stand by it, but that also um, that put wind in our sails in terms of with what attitude also the new material had on stage at the beginning of touring. Just like, oh, and you're gonna love this now. A lot of confidence pushed it into feeling just as natural as any other of the stuff we've played forever.
Coming full circle and back to my next question, taking that momentum, bring it over here. So, given that it's been a while in the works, could you tell us a little bit about how the Australian tour has come to be? And I imagine you've probably tried to maybe have some shots at it in the past. And have you ever been close before?
Yes, we've been close and we've been, yelling at people and trying to get on certain festival circuits that that you guys fly in a bunch of Europeans and Americans for usually. The pure practicality of why it worked this time, well, we have kept the same booking agent for a while now, so meaning we are happy with him. And I don't know really. That's a question for the grown-ups. Why it would have happened now? My feeling was always have been very always pushed for, especially since we got a good stronghold in North America and Western and Central Europe in particular, but now Eastern Europe for sure as well. Like home turf, so to speak. It's very comfortable nowadays in that thinking, oh, if we will tour there or there stuff. Now we have built a relationship to the audience, and then people in offices picking up the phone when we call, so that we can strategize on when and how and what we want to do. But then we always try to go for the places where we are underdogs, where we got something to prove, and where we simply haven't been yet. So we've been nagging about it. It's always that list of that Australia has been on, alongside complaining, we're the only Swedish band ever that hasn't played Japan yet. What's wrong with you guys? Or finally breaking into South America for the first time last year, going there with Iron Maiden and stuff. No, so it's finally a promoter's willing to roll the dice with us. And I also understand that it's a long flight. So, for a Swedish band, you can, when you're a teenager or in the early 20s and starting out and learning the ropes, you can go jump in a van and fail in Germany as many times as you please. And it's not really that much skin off your back. And with Australia, it's just, I guess you simply need a lot of momentum many times for people to roll the dice on it. And I'm being told we're doing well enough now. But I mean, it's all about making that statement. And people need to get that ticket, show up, brag about it, and tell everybody else what they missed. And then we come back to a 10 times bigger place next time. But it's all about now, again, kicking that door in.
Yeah, well, for those listening along at home, here's your excuse. Hit the pause button now. Come back when you've bought your ticket, and then we'll keep talking.
Exactly.
Outside of that, have you got any sightseeing or anything you'd like to do that's a bit touristy outside of the tour itself in mind, or is it going to be strictly a business affair?
It is a short trip this time, and it will be pretty intense in and out, just because of what else is happening in our lives.
Hmm.
If I don't see one kangaroo, I'll be pissed. Preferably in the wild. But also my wife, who is much an animal lover as I am, also threatens to divorce me if I see a kangaroo and she's not there. She won't be there. So my marriage is hanging loose from that standpoint right now. But there's also a very cool thing. One thing I love, when you go to a place for the first time, you don't need much. Over time, I mean, we intend to make Australia, like so many other places for us in the world, a home from home over time. And I want to do it all and see it all. First time you're in a country, street lights are different. The selection of candy in a gas station is different. Um, you know what I mean? Like it takes a
Yeah.
little, and all those first impressions, if you soak it in a little bit, means that the fact that this trip will be too short is fine. We'll expand on it over time. But give me one kangaroo, zero spiders, and if someone lives up to the series, like Crocodile Dundee was one of my favorite films at home as a kid, and if at least one fella manages to somehow live up to that stereotype, I'll be delighted.
Yeah. Well, kangaroos in the inner cities might be a bit tough, but you don't have to go too far out of the metro regions to start running into them. Even in larger suburbs and sort of country
Yeah.
towns around the cities, they're not too
Such as
uncommon. But
an Uber ride from A to B or something, or whatever rideshare app gig economy dystopian system you have
yeah,
there. But whichever thing like that is I can look at because I'm from Sweden. I've seen plenty of moose. I deem it being equal roe deer or stuff like that. So I've been told it's equally common, at least as equally common. Also, emus. I want to say an emu in the wild. Fierce warriors, I'm told.
they are. They are. I was lucky enough myself to visit nearby that part of the world, Scandinavia in general, last year, and I have to say, for all the hype that we get, and I say this to a lot of Nordics, that as terrifying as the thought of some of our snakes and spiders are, I would not want to run into a moose in a situation where I'm cornered by it or it feels threatened or anything. Those things are terrifying compared to
Yeah,
a little.
but you will never have to fear, that a moose has crawled down your boot, and that you, that's their size, and also that they're not predators. They aren't built to kill necessarily unless you threaten their calves and stuff like that, or if you're between a really horny bull and a cow, and like it you just keep your distance a bit and enjoy the moment. There's no enjoying the moment with your crawling, creeping things, as far as I'm told. Then it's also what you're grown up around. I mean, you're still alive, so someone
Yeah.
is making it from year to year.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I think you'll be pretty safe. Other than Brisbane, Brisbane has a lot of spiders in the inner city, particularly because of the river. Big golden orb weavers the size of your hand, and I mean, you don't need to be too worried about them. You'll see them pretty easily. They're pretty big, but they do like to catch the odd small bird or rodent in their big webs. So when you see one of those, keep that in mind that's what they're set up to do.
I'm not a bird. I should be fine. I'll try to
Yeah,
calm
yeah,
myself.
exactly. Uh, so one of the other big differences, I suppose, on sort of touching on what we're talking about, is the culture differences and the personality differences between our parts of the world are quite large. And I found when I went and saw Norway and Denmark in particular, I really got along with a lot of people, and I think I got a lot of friends over there now that I keep in touch
Mm-hmm.
with. And in general, I think people were surprised to hear, oh, like that. You sure they were really friendly and happy to chat and all that sort of stuff? And yeah, hell yeah, they are. But I guess what I'm getting at is you're looking forward to the culture shock differences, and have you got any sort of like cultural things in mind in that you're interested to find out while you're over here?
Hmm. I wonder if I have circled anything in that I like that. I mean, we hear about Australia enough in our lives. I feel that it's not quite like going to. There are parts of the world I feel that I would deem would be more going to a different planet from a people standpoint. But I mean, everywhere someone from Northern Europe goes to, you always feel that people are more open and easygoing about things. I mean, we are a friendly bunch. It's just we're stiff in the beginning, I think people tend to agree on.
Mm.
Mm. And supposedly it's less of that. Then, I mean, again, I won't have time for it this time, but anything, and I don't think I will, but anything and everything about when you come to places where the indigenous culture is such a big part of how we perceive the country from the outside and what we know about it and stuff, and what there's to learn from there. There over time, I hope to, see more, learn more, participate in more, and anything. I don't know. I had without the band. I've spent some time in Mexico the other year, and just everything when you in modern times, how you deal with decolonialism and how that shapes a nation, and what is the history that is usually quite sad in those things, and then where are we today with it, and how that shapes what you see around you and stuff. And in Mexico City was so evident the presence of indigenous cultures, post-colonials, that melting pot. And now what I felt was overall, in the way I got to see it, a place that was trying to do its best with the current day situation and what that means. And I mean, the politics of that and what that means at large is very interesting to me. So more of that rather than surfer dudes, I guess, is where I
Yeah, absolutely.
if I really start to think about it.
You've definitely picked an interesting time to be over here in terms of that, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot about it. But we're in the middle of a national referendum, is what you'd call it, about Indigenous rights and writing them into our constitution. I don't think it's currently this way, but at one point in our very troubled history, we had the Indigenous population written in as members of the flora and fauna. And we've come a long way since then, but there'll be another referendum soon, possibly even around the time that you're over here, where people will vote on essentially a representation of the Indigenous population to Parliament. And it's really interesting, and you'll probably learn a lot about it if it comes up, and if it'll be in the cultural conscience while you're over here for sure. There's all sorts of and with politics and all that, there's always people who will support it for the right reasons and support it for the wrong reasons and oppose it for maybe good intentions, and those who oppose it because they that's their political belief, if you will. But there'll definitely be
a tricky, touchy thing, but endlessly interesting to me. Speaking of trouble history of it, isn't it? An Australian friend here told me one of those famous explorers and stuff, I think, perished in the wilderness in Australia because, according to the diary, like, there's no one out here to help me, I'm all on my own, blah, 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 blah. And then ran into some savages, like Aboriginals, basically, like, hey man, you're thirsty. But they were too brown for his preference for him to accept the help. So he's saying, there are no sensible humans out here to help me. And he, literally suicide by racism. I don't remember who it was, and I think it's one of those famous names, the way I was told it. But basically, it reminds me of it when you talk about how in the Constitution they weren't even human at one point. Reminds me of being told that story.
Yeah, well, I'll fact check that and write a little note in at the end of this episode and find out what that is.
But I mean, you ruin the fun if you fact check things too closely. You realize it would be like 5% of the podcasts in the world if things have to be checked, what people spew out.
Yeah, Joe Rogan set the example, and I'm not going to go any higher than that bar.
No.
Speaking of, I think we're coming up on time. Do you have any last thoughts you want to share with us, Johannes? Any other pearls of wisdom or things you're excited for about the tour, or messages out here to the Aussie fans?
I said the thing, right? I said the thing that we are on the road with the greatest album we have ever made, putting on the greatest shows we ever have. And I'm out here at home on my island, trying to run over 10Ks here and there to be able to deliver that thing we decided to deliver, where we stand on stage for close to 2 hours every night and make it feel like 45 minutes, because we're nailing it and you don't want to miss it. Can't miss it.
It's like the first thing they teach you in public speaking school. You got to tell them what you're going to tell them again, and then tell them what you've told them. That's
Yeah,
exactly.
that's how you make that school report a bit meatier.
Yeah.
Jules Verne wrote 40 Leagues Under the Sea, or whatever, 80 Leagues Under the Sea. 100 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne was written, and
Well, you got an A+ for that one. So, actually, I do have one more question on that note. It's reminded me something I wanted to ask. And Avatar have done a really good job of setting the example on how to brand a band, and I mean that in a positive way. I don't mean that
sure.
You're selling out or you're. I think that when you think of Avatar, you think of a very specific set of visual cues that come with what you guys do, and it really builds into the art of the band.
Mm-hmm.
From a practical point of view, does that have to be considered when you're taking 32 hours worth of flights over to this part of the world? Are there any limitations? And without giving away any surprises that we might see on stage, I suppose we can expect a pretty impressive stage show from if the YouTube videos are anything to go by.
Yes, yes, you can. Certain things just won't fit in a container and be shipped on time over there. But then we are also able to think on our feet and adjust so that it's still just as theatrical, just as big time, just as significant of shows in comparison to those when we get to, drive a truck around 25 shows in a row in Europe. It will be a lot of things will be very recognizable, and a lot of things will be invented specifically for you. So it's not a bad deal at all from that standpoint. And as far as it goes, that branding, I think the magic for us was always that once we developed our image as a band would have for real the day when we learned to listen to the songs and look for it, and not to make it part of the art project, to kind of go all in on what we wanted creatively, made it so much easier to put together something that we feel comfortable selling, and you know what I mean? Like, it's
absolutely.
So we stopped thinking art, and we started to think art instead of image, and then that leads to something that would be considered a good image for what we're doing nowadays. And I guess that's the trick. And then we are in love with the art form of. It's not just music. Being in a band is a form of art itself. Show business, entertainment done right is an art form in itself, and we're into all of it.
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot of examples of bands who have tried to put the cart before the horse in terms of having an image, and then if you remove all the visuals, if you remove all the stage presence and all that, what you're left with is just kind of ordinary music.
Exactly, and it just has to rhyme with who you are, where you're from in your life. What you bring to the table. Like, I always go to seeing Behemoth and Cannibal Corpse co-headlining, and how each of them were the perfect representation of exactly what they should be. Like, I think Behemoth played first, and I was all, this is the greatest thing ever. Nothing can be cooler than this. Then Cannibal Corpse did visually the opposite, and I feel this is the greatest thing ever. Nothing can be cooler than this. And then imagine Cannibal Corpse in corpse paint and all that smoke on stage, and those welded, badass satanic mic stands and whatnot, and the synchronized headbanging, and it would feel ridiculous. So it's all about also, again, listening to that inner voice, and you have to believe it in order for others to believe it.
Exactly. I actually couldn't think of a better co-headliner than that exact example. The last little section of this interview was cut off due to some recording issues. However, you can get your tickets now to catch Avatar on their Dance Devil Dance Australian tour, kicking off on the 25th of August and heading up the east coast of Australia. I've been your host, Jordan, and I will catch you on the next episode of Shred is Not Dead.